Hey, what's up everyone? This is MusicTechHelpGuy, and in this video, I want to show you 5 creative arpeggiator tricks in Logic Pro. I'm not talking about the most base function of an arpeggiator. You play a chord, you plop the arpeggiator on there, and it arpeggiates the chord. I'm talking about some more creative techniques that you can use to assist in your composition, your rhythm making, creating motion, your production. So these are 5 arpeggiator tricks that I use all the time that I find are super useful outside of just the base function of arpeggiating chords. Before I get into that though, I want to quickly tell you about the sponsor of today's video, Boombox. If you want to take your workflow to the next level, you've got to check out boombox.io. Let's face it, as producers and creatives, we're constantly optimizing our plugins, software, hardware, and production techniques we use to make music. Why not optimize and streamline how you communicate with clients and collaborators so you can spend less time answering emails and spend more time actually making music? Boombox is the ultimate platform for music collaboration. You can upload audio files, stems, multi-tracks, full DAW sessions, lyrics, really any file you want, and securely invite collaborators. You can use the web app, the macOS Sync app, or use their mobile apps to listen to your tracks and make production notes on the go. If you want to check out Boombox for yourself, head over to boombox.io today and get 4 GB of free storage. Okay, so if you've never used the arpeggiator before, let me recap its basic functions. So you can choose a MIDI track, you can add some notes to this. It can be a chord, it can be individual notes. Maybe I'll add an A minor 7 chord, let me just go to bar snap here, A, C, E, D, or G rather. Pull that out, okay. It's just a chord. Then you go to that software instrument tracks MIDI effects here in the inspector and load up the arpeggiator. And there are different directions you can take the arpeggiator. You can have it arpeggiate up, you can make it go down, up and down. You can change the pace of it, the rate of it. You can add variation to it, you can add octave changes. But all that is just sort of basic functionality. This first tip I want to show you is creating bass lines, in particular creating synthesizer bass lines. So let me load up just any instrument here. You can use any bass instrument you want. One of the ones I really like in the ES2 is the classic synth bass. And then what you can do here is you just create like a really simple whole note bass line, because we're going to let the arpeggiator do the work for us. So let's maybe start down here. Yeah, maybe there. And we'll make that 2 bars in length. Let's jump down to the 6 chord on F, the 5 chord, and then back up to G, the 7 chord. So right now it's just really boring, just individual hits, because this is like it's a bass instrument that's been, you know, the ADSR in it is basically telling it that there's no sustain. So I'm going to load up the arpeggiator on here, and if you just play single notes, the arpeggiator is really just going to function like a note repeater. And that can work if that's the kind of bass line you want. But you can also play around with different octave ranges and different variations. The one I like is octave range 2, variation 3. Gives you that sort of classic, like synthwave 80s pop bass line. If I do it that way, one thing I like to do is I like to find the kick drum in the drum kit. So it's this one right here. It says kick 1, 2, 3, 4.1. I'm just gonna rename this and call it main kick. And then if I add like a compressor to the bass track, go up to the side chain, go to instrument, and then choose that kick. Set the side chain to max and peak. Turn off the auto gain and play around with the threshold and ratio. So now the kick drum in my drum machine designer kit is ducking like the first note of the arpeggiated sequence, creating this sort of like side chained pumping effect, but also with this like 80s synthwave style bass line. Another way to do this without the side chain, it's a little different feel, a little different sound, is you can use the grid to create custom bassline rhythms. So if you go down to grid mode, here you're going to be able to type in each step in the sequence. So these are all 16th notes. And then you can actually pull out certain notes if you want. And for this one, I like to use the second variation. But again, you can try different note orders. And if you want to make this more complex, you can do something like this, where you change up the rhythm of the bass line. And you can do all of this in the step sequencer if you prefer, but the thing is, here you only have to establish the rhythm once, and you can change the notes in the piano roll editor to any, any chord you like or any bass tone you like. So if I decide to come up to C here, it's going to apply that same rhythm. Although you're going to see that the grid here, the grid sequencer, is going to restart itself at the beginning of each new note. But if you have shorter notes, like over here with these half notes, it's going to restart itself. So just keep that in mind. So that's trick number 2, using grid mode to build rhythmic bass sequences. Okay, so trick number 3 is I really like using the arpeggiator to create rhythmic sequences for chords. And I don't mean just arpeggiating the chord, I mean playing the whole chord in a rhythmic way, and then applying that to the entire track. So what I did off screen is I added some chords here with a sampler instrument. Shameless plug, but I do need to keep the lights on over here. This instrument is from my Logic sampler instrument collection called Divine Waves. It's a collection of over 50 custom sampler instruments that focus on distortion and ambience. If that's something you're interested in, I did do an overview video demoing most of the patches on this channel, and I'll leave a link to that below if you want to check it out. But right now, this just sounds like this, just all whole notes. Okay, so let's add the arpeggiator. Let's go back to grid mode, and let's say I want a rhythm like ba-dup, 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 something like that. Problem here is it's just going to arpeggiate the notes. What you can do instead is click this little button here, and what this will do is it'll make sure that each step plays the whole chord instead of arpeggiating the chord. But I really just want this to happen once per chord, so I'm going to drag this out to the 16 mark. And you can also drag these steps here to the left and right to control their gait or the length. Whoop, I messed that up there. Let's try that again. I want to leave a little bit of space. Maybe let's add a couple more over here, pull down their velocity, make them really short. So this is a great way to quickly create rhythms on the fly without having to do it all in the piano roll editor or playing it in or using the step sequencer. And again, that rhythm is going to apply to any chord we add on this track. Okay, this next one is creating rhythmic synth melodies, but just really simple melodies, not like a main melody, sort of like maybe a counter melody to go with the chords and bass. And I know some people are probably going to say, oh, Josh, just play that in on your MIDI controller or type in the notes. But, you know, it's easy for me to come up with an idea when it's in my head. If I can hear it in my head, I can usually figure out how to get it out in piano roll or on the keyboard. Sometimes I'm in a section of a song and I'm like, I need something here. I need a lead here, but I don't have any ideas. And I find this a really helpful way to sort of come up with melodic ideas. So what I've done is I've pulled up the Funk Pulse lead in Retro Synth. And what I like to do is take the chord progression, pull it down. You may choose to put this up an octave or down an octave or, you know, whatever, wherever it fits. I'm going to keep it in the same octave. And right now, this is just going to play those chords. In fact, it'll probably just play one note at a time. Okay, so it is a polyphonic instrument. So that's just going to play those chords. Let's go back to the arpeggiator. And this time, we're going to go back to grid mode. And what I like to do is set the length of the sequence here. Because if you only type in the notes, it'll only set the length of the sequence to your last note. And what I'm going to do is sort of bring this note out to kind of be a little longer, like a long tone. And then some eighth notes. And let's add a little 16th note in here and pull down the velocity a bit. So the rhythm is dum, ba-dum bum bum bum, ba-dum bum bum bum, right? But we're gonna let the chords sort of influence the melody, what melody is created. This is where the variation and the octave range are gonna come in really handy. You can also switch octave range over to inversions and get some other sounds. But let's see what this sounds like as is. So you're hearing that this first note is always the root of the chord. If you push the variation up to 2, it's going to go to the third of the chord or the second note of the chord. If I go up to 3, it's going to go to the fifth of the chord or the top note of the third note of the chord, really. It's the fifth in this case, but you know, I guess it all depends on what information you have in your MIDI region. Let's try putting this in octave 2. Okay, cool. Let's see what that sounds like with everything else in. So I've got sort of this cool little counter melody that, you know, it's not going to be the main melody of the song, but you know what? All I had to do is drag the chords down and adjust the arpeggiator, and I've got this cool little melodic idea here. Okay, this one I really love. I like to take multiple instruments, put them in a track stack. Instead of putting the chords directly on the instruments, I put the chords on the track stack so that the track stack sends the same MIDI data to all instruments inside of the track stack. So you can do this with as many instruments as you like. Some of them you can add arpeggiators to, some you can add other MIDI effects to, some you can add no MIDI effects to. But what this creates is sort of like this, like a stereo frenetic arpeggiator effect. So let me show you what I have right now. It's just a bass line and a few chords. So right now, this is just playing the arpeggiated chord rhythm we had earlier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this down to a new track. Let's actually pull the bass down. And I'm going to reset the channel strip on this. I'm going to duplicate this a couple of times. And I'm going to choose another one of my Divine Waves instruments. This one is called Epic Arcade. And I'll add that to both of these instruments. So I have 2 tracks with Epic Arcade on it. Then I've got another one that's sort of like a pad. This is called Sea Beast. Okay, so right now I've got 3 instruments. They all have instruments loaded up. Only one of them has the chords on it. I'm going to select all three of these, go up to track, create track stack, and we're going to create a summing stack. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to put the MIDI region on the top of the track stack, and I'll just call this Arps and pad. So right now you're just going to hear three instruments all playing chords. And two of them are the exact same instrument. What I'll do is with the two instruments that are the same, I'll change these over to stereo pan, and then I'll pan one left and one right. I don't know why that one showed up as inverted, but if you hold command, just bonus tip, if you hold command, you can swap the left and right channels. So I've got one going left, one going right. That's not going to do anything because it's the same samples. It's not going to really do anything. So let's create some differing motion on these two Epic Arcade tracks. So on this first one, I'll load up the Arpeggiator. Now I created two ARP patterns in advance for this one, so I just saved these. So here's what the first one sounds like. And then on the second Epic Arcade, I'm going to pull up the Arpeggiator again. I'm going to use Josh Arp 2. And what I've done here is I've tried to make sure that I get some notes in on steps that are not being used in this sequence. So like one, well, not really two, it's really just one there. 1, 4, and 6, 1, 4, and 6. So 4 and 6 are open. I've got something on 8 here. There's nothing on 8 here. I've got 13 and 15 here. There's nothing on 13 and 15 here. So this is just going to create some like opposing motion, and it'll sort of sound like these instruments are kind of swirling around in the stereo field, especially when you listen to it on headphones. You can try out different note orders for these. This one's going up. This one's going down. I highly recommend you make one go up and one go down. And then you can play around with the octave range if you want. And then I can add in the Sea Beast pad. I'm not doing anything with that. That's just going to be a pad playing in the background. Let's say I want that to be down an octave. I can add the transposer plugin, and I'll pull that down by 12 semitones, which is 1 octave. So that's what I love about using track stacks with MIDI, is you can add different MIDI effects to each instrument, and the same chords are going to be sent to all three instruments. Now, you could just break them up if you want and just put the exact same MIDI on each track, but I like doing it this way because if I decide to change the MIDI or change the chords or something, I don't have to do it 3 times. I don't have to duplicate anything. So let's hear what that sounds like now with everything in, plus the bass, and there's a bit of like a filtered kick up here. Okay, so those are 5 creative arpeggiator tricks in Logic Pro. If you want to see more arpeggiator tricks videos, let me know, because I mean, I have probably at least 20 more tips and tricks on arpeggiators that I find really helpful. And we haven't even gotten into this mode here where you can actually play in your pattern note by note. So and we haven't even gotten into like using the MIDI record feature with the arpeggiator either. So there's a lot of really cool features baked into the arpeggiator and a lot of cool techniques that you can accomplish. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to see more content like this. As always, thank you so much for the support, and thanks for watching.